name is HW and thank you so much for watching Tone Junkie TV. Last video I talked about my 3-step approach to dialing in profiles on the Kemper, to just getting better sounding stuff on the Kemper. And that was first the definition control, then the EQ on the front of the Kemper, and then lastly, third, so sort of for fine tuning, was the high and low shifts in the cabinet. 99% of the time that does everything I need it to do to the EQ of the Kemper. Now, there's some other controls like clarity, like compression, and all that stuff that's in the amplifier section. And those do things a little bit, they're not quite EQ controls. They're doing other things. So, yeah, use those, but that 3-step approach gets me where I need to go, and that's sort of how I think about dialing in my tone on the Kemper. But today I wanted to address a question that I get a lot of times, which is like, hey HW, I have a really high quality guitar and it doesn't quite sound like the demos you put out. And one thing I want to say about that is, if you notice, I keep a pretty respectable collection of instruments around, and one of the reasons is like, you know, like my gold Strat, I don't play that out ever. I don't think I ever have. I keep it around because it's a super traditional, vintagey sounding Strat. It looks great on camera, and I want to have a traditional Fender 3-pickup guitar to try stuff out on. I have a Sparkle Jet. I don't play a ton. This guitar, I haven't been playing out. I haven't played this guitar outside my house in probably 6 or 8 months. I just like it for around the house. It used to be my #1. Stuff moves around here, but I try to keep stuff in those videos like PRS guitars, Les Paul style stuff, and SG, P90s, single coils, humbuckers, tellies. I haven't played a telly out of the house in like 2 years, but I keep those around because I want you to see what different guitars sound like in those Tone Junkie demos. But one thing I gotta let people know is that you can't make every guitar sound the same. Like, just because we play it with a Strat and it sounds Stratty, it doesn't mean your Strat's going to sound exactly the same. And I think there's some people who are disappointed. They're like, I have a Strat and it doesn't sound like that, because their Strat's thinner or thicker, or they have humbuckers, but you know, they're way different than the humbuckers we're using. Like, there's all sorts of different variables that go into tone. But I just want to show you, here's like 2 quality guitars from the same manufacturer that are very different in sound. So here is a little thing. I'm still on the Silver Jubilee thing. I'm going to show you, I cannot really make these 2 guitars sound the same, even with the same profile. They just have profoundly different sounds. For the first guitar, that's going to be this this Strat with a Sir SSV and 2 Sir, I think these are V60 LPs. Here's a sound. Here's what it sounds like in some different positions. Here's the 2 single coils out of phase. It sounds Stratty, it sounds vintagey. I've got these EQs flat. I had a chorus in the beginning. I put on a tube screamer. Nothing crazy going on here. Now, let's see how this other good quality guitar sounds compared to this Sir Strat. So I'm going to put this one down. Now, this is an SSV with 2 V60 LP single coils. It's a great guitar. It's a fantastic guitar. This is a custom classic, so it's the series that came right before Classic Pro. But spec-wise, there are Classic Pros that are nearly identical to this, like pretty much identical. I think the neck shape is slightly different, but this pickup configuration, this color in a Strat, same bridge, it's a Classic Pro for our purposes. Here is a Rasmus M102. This is basically a Sir Modern, and here's what they did. They wanted to do an import line. A lot of people don't know this. Sir did an import line for a little while. They sent all the guitars back to America to get American pickups, American bridge, American hardware. And what ended up happening was there were too many problems with the frets. They had to correct it in the Surf factory in the States, and they decided we're not going to do this line because we're having to do too much work to make them perfect out of the door from the stuff we're getting in China. So this is Chinese wood, Sur pickups, same Godo bridge as that other one, SSV humbucker. That was an SSV humbucker in the bridge. Here it's in the neck. This is a hotter humbucker, and my point in this is that's a vintage-esque sounding instrument. This is a modern sounding instrument. Can we get them to sound the same? Well, we can't. Here's why. My bad. I hope you can really hear the difference. I mean, that's the same tone, same profiles. I've done nothing. These pickups are hotter. This bridge pickup is hotter. It's more scooped. Without the mod, you can just hear this is not the most traditional single coil sound. This sounds like single coils in the 80s sounded. It sounds like the split that you would get out of like an Ibanez Gem or something. It just doesn't sound vintagey. And there's almost nothing you can do to this guitar to make it sound vintagey. Although you could go like this. So I'm gonna, these are scooped. These pickups are more scooped, like this single coil in the middle. I mean, that's made to be bright and like sort of cut through a bunch of gain. But here's an SSV in the neck here. It's not a bad sound. That's not the least vintagey thing in the world. As soon as I cut this thing, as soon as I split this SSV with this Sir FL, this Fletcher Landau, it's just not. It's just hot. It's a hot sounding pickup, and it's more scooped. This bridge humbucker is definitely more scooped than an SSV. And that's fine. It doesn't sound bad. It just sounds more modern. And so you got to be prepared for that. Now here's what I could sort of do to fool it. I could put on the tube screamer. You can just hear the character of that. It's very modern. Now, here's what I can do. If I want to make this modern guitar sound a little more punchy, juicy, stratty, what happens is I need to add more mid-range to the pickups, but I need to leave some brightness in. So I have the treble and the presence up a little bit. I'm going to add a ton of mid-range here, and instantly we're going to get a little more of a vintage EQ curve, sort of. Some of you are probably thinking, HW, that's not vintagey, that just sounds like mid-range. Well, it can be the characteristic of vintage humbuckers to be more mid-rangey than they are scooped. So this is sort of a way to do it. The other way to do it is to do this. I'm going to return this EQ back to sort of where it is. Now I'm going to take the EQ, I'm going to put it in from the position post to position pre. Now what am I doing? My EQ comes before the amplifier section. So I'm actually taking the position of the EQ from after the amplifier section, moving it in front of the amplifier section. Now, when I change the EQ, I'm almost editing the sound of the pickups because I'm changing the signal. I'm running these pickups into an EQ, and then it's going into the amplifier section. So here, I can add some mid-range, I can cut some bass. I'm going to leave the treble and presence where they are, and I have no idea how this is going to sound, but maybe it'll sound more vintage. Here's with it off. Here's with it on. It sounds good. It does sound like a modern interpretation. I mean, here's with a tube screamer. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Here's the bridge. Without that mid-range. So you can hear some of that modern high-end sizzle. It's not bad. I'm just trying to illustrate that even by adjusting this stuff, I can't really get to the same response. They're both stratty, they're both super strats, but they're really different, you know? Hey, it's a killer guitar, and I'm really digging this thing, but, you know, it's not a vintage-sounding instrument. It just isn't, and it never will be, you know? It straight up sounds just, I can't even, never mind. This doesn't sound vintagey at all. I don't know what I'm talking about. But it illustrates the point. I can't get this thing to sound like that thing. Maybe there's some pickup thing I could put in from, some EQ I could run. But it's not something I can dial in with the EQ quickly here. Maybe a graphic EQ I could use. But case in point, I can make this guitar sound good. And I can make that guitar sound good. But the Kemper has the same limitations like an amp does. It's going to sound like this thing into that profile. It's not a magic box, you know? Sometimes people hear digital and it's like, I should be able to get any sound out. No, it's really profiling those amplifiers. And so is this thing going to sound like that thing? Is this red guitar going to sound like this Sunburst Strat through an amp? It's not, and it's not on the Kemper either. And you might be thinking, HW, obviously, who didn't know this? You can't. I'm only putting this out there because sometimes I hear people give me the feedback, hey, I have a really high quality guitar. It doesn't sound like your guitar in the demo. And I'm saying, I have a lot of different guitars for the purpose of showing them off, but guitars are the source, are the first thing in the signal chain. They are creating the sound. So I'm trying to show off in these demos a gain range. You know, I'm trying to show off what an amp does well. And if you have a similar guitar, you're going to get there. But if you're playing something like this, don't expect it to cop the tones that, you know, a Telly's going to cop. It's just not going to. This is a great instrument. And I got to feature something like this more in the demo. So I might start doing a little more modern stuff. I'm talking to a guy who has a little more of a modern rock style in town here. Hopefully I'll be able to get him to do some demos. But the point of all those demos that we make is so you can see different flavors, different sides, and you can get a feel for what that thing sounds like, especially in other players' hands. To me, this thing sounds modern, and that thing sounds just a little bit more vintage. And that's not even the most vintage sounding guitar I have in here. I would say that's a fairly modern interpretation of a vintage sound, because my Goldie Strat sounds way more vintage than that one. Anyway, I've been HW. Hope this was helpful, and I hope this illustrated the point. Guitars don't sound the same, but the Kemper just sounds great with everything, doesn't it? It really does sound incredible with everything, because to me, I am loving the tones I get with this guitar, even though like a more modern style instrument like this isn't totally usually my thing.